Hey there, everyone. Thanks again for tuning into Sin's Workshop. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. All right, today we're going to be talking about Bitterblue by Kristen Kasher. This is the third novel in the Graceling series. And I have to say, one of the things I think stands out about her writing is that all her female characters are very distinct. You know, some authors, and sometimes it works for some authors. In fact, it works very well for one of my favorite authors, Gina Showalter. But sometimes authors tend to just kind of write the same strong female protagonist. You know, they're strong in the exact same ways. Whereas there are different versions and different ways to highlight strength. So I think it's overall very compelling to see an author really highlight strength in different ways for her female characters. You had Katza, you had Fire, now we have Bitterblue. All of these three female characters are leads in the story. And they are all very distinct as far as the story goes. You have Katza, she was a fighter. She was formidable. That was pretty much her. Fire was still a fighter, but there was something more gentle about her. And now you have Bitterblue, and her strength really is her intelligence and her desire to seek the truth and find reparations for everything her father, King Lek, did in the past. However, she's coming across that that's not as easy as she would hope. So the story does follow Bitterblue. It's been about 10 years since the events of Graceling, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. I don't think you should read them in publication order. If you are just now reading the series, I recommend you read Fire first, then Graceling, then Bitterblue. They move more fluid that way because Fire just kind of seems more like its own standalone novel than anything. It doesn't feel like filler, but I feel like it does distract from the overarching scope of the story. So, it's been 10 years since the events of Graceling. Bitterblue is now queen. She's a young woman now. She's no longer a little girl. And she knows how to fight because Katza did teach her how to fight. But what I think is also very compelling about her is how she moves through her world. So she knows there's something going on. She is finding out that there's a lot of underhandedness going on in her kingdom, and she wants to know who it is and why they're doing it. So she sneaks out of her palace. She goes by the name of Sparks. And then she's investigating these truth seekers, right? So she's discovering that not a lot of people want the truth out in the open, that there's a group of people who she doesn't know who do not want the truth of Lek's crimes to be out in the open. But Bitterblue doesn't agree with that because she knows that there are a lot of people suffering. There are so many people who went missing under her father's regime that she knows she has to find closure for some of these people. But she's coming across, it's not going to be as easy as she would think. A lot of people that went missing were young girls, and she's discovering, if you remember Graceling, her father had the ability to control minds very powerfully. He could control minds, he could control how you feel. So what he ended up doing was he was obsessed with fire. You can tell in this story that their encounter left him absolutely obsessed. And what's really interesting about that is the fact that he wanted to kind of recreate fire. He wanted to recreate monsters, and he thought he found a way to do it. He was experimenting with his people, right? Some of these people were young girls, and a word of warning, rape is mentioned, and it is very uncomfortable to read about the rape being mentioned because he is controlling the minds of the people in his court, the men. And he is forcing his men to rape the girls, and he's manipulating their minds, thinking, oh, it's okay, don't worry, it's okay, don't worry. And it's very disturbing. It's a very disturbing scene because the men who, they're telling Bitterblue this, you can hear the pain in their voices. You can hear that disgust with themselves, even though they are also victims. They were mentally abused, and they were at times physically abused as well. I mean, King Lek, he was sadistic. He was absolutely 100% sadistic. I mean, you can't get over that. So he was just a despicable human being, and it's just very sad to see these men, they are drowning in their sorrow. They are drowning in the things that they did. There is no hope for them. And so they don't want the truth to be out in the open, because that, just even thinking about it, they are reminded constantly, daily, of all the horrific things they were forced to do for them. They're still in a prison of their own minds, of the horror. There will be no peace for them, unfortunately. King Lek has damaged them so much that they are just going to have to suffer and suffer and suffer, unfortunately. And it's just very painful to see that. But it is a good story, don't get me wrong. It is very compelling because Bitterblue is trying as she might to find the truth. She wants the truth out in the open. She wants to get closure for many of these people. She wants to know what is happening in her kingdom. She wants to right the wrongs of she wants to right the wrongs of her father. And it's just very, I can't really quite think of the word for it, but it is very intelligent writing, because she's faced with this conundrum, like, well, am I really getting justice if I'm hurting other people? I don't really think it's quite that clear cut, unfortunately, because people are going to get hurt. But I do think that the people who want closure, I think they deserve the closure more than anything. I mean, they had daughters and sons. Family members go missing under King Lek's regime, and they're never going to know what happened to them. So I think finding out the truth, no matter the cost, it's a very interesting question. And I think we've seen this question a lot in other stories. You never really think about it. You're like, well, we always say, like, maybe a little white lie won't hurt anyone. Sometimes a little white lie can hurt someone. But that's what I did like about this story, how it really did push that boundary of, right versus wrong, and truth and justice. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I did think it was a very well told story. I do think Bitterblue herself, she's a very compelling character. And again, her intelligence is what sets her apart from Katsa and Fire. She is very different from them, and you really do get to see it in the story, and just how different, their personalities, their mannerisms, everything about these women is very distinct. And that is what I found most compelling, because you're following Bitterblue on this journey. This is a very character-driven story. Unlike the first two, unlike Fire and Graceling, which had more action-packed sequences in the storytelling, this one's not that very action-packed. There are some scenes of, running on rooftops, catching thieves, but they are very few and they are very far between. this is mostly a character-driven story more than a plot-driven story, because it is focusing on that question of truth and justice, and it is evaluating the lengths people will go to saving themselves, or, ultimately the story is about healing in a way. Bitterblue is trying to heal her kingdom from everything Lek has done. But, like I said, there are some of the men in her court, nothing's going to heal them. You do get to see how some people do self-medicate. So I think noticing those signs is really important for real life. If you see someone is hurting, like Bitterblue, at first she doesn't really realize they're hurting, but then she does realize that they're hurting, that everything, all their behavior is because, they've suffered so much under her father's regime. So it's about truth and justice, yes, but it is also about rehabilitation. It is about healing. It is about finding hope if there is hope. So that's what I do like about this story. It is a very kind of tension-driven character story, because you're following her as she's uncovering secrets, as she's uncovering secret messages from her mother, who is dead. You're uncovering secret organizations, you're uncovering truth seekers, you're uncovering a lot with Bitterblue, and I really do think that says something, because again, we're highlighting her intelligence as her strength in this story, and that's what makes her a compelling person to follow. And so this was Bitterblue by Kristen Cashore. I'm going to go ahead and give this book 4 out of 5 stars. It is an emotional read, that's for sure, and it is a character-driven story. So it is less action-packed than the first two. So I enjoyed it, and I hope you guys do too. If you want to go ahead and purchase the book, I do recommend purchasing from your local bookseller or online book retailer. Please support your local bookstore or book retailer. I just ask that you just try to avoid Amazon. On that note, if money's tight, please check the book out from your library. I know a lot of us are still kind of reeling from COVID-19. Don't forget to get vaccinated. I still have to get vaccinated. I'm pregnant. My doctor says I really need to get vaccinated. But, life, work, sometimes it's hard to find time. And in any case, I hope you all will continue to support me by liking this podcast and subscribing to it. You can please support me as well by sharing with all your book-loving friends. And you can also become a supporter on Anchor FM, my recording platform. There's information in the description above. Have a great day, guys, and happy reading.